Today we're going to tackle a huge topic, China's massive military expansion. And the best way to really get our heads around it is to think of it like a high-stakes game. A game of spear versus shield. The big question is, who's building the spear and who's building the shield? And trust me, the answer is a whole lot more complicated than you might think.
All right, before we dive in, I just want to say that this explainer is a special re-edit of the Sip&Talk podcast. And it's all made possible by our sponsor, Micky. We're pulling out all the key insights from a really deep discussion to give you the highlights right here.
So let's get right to it. If we're going to understand what's really going on, we need to answer three massive questions. First off, how much money is actually being spent here? Second, what's the end game? What are they trying to achieve? And finally, maybe the most important question of all, in this incredibly tense situation, who's really afraid of whom?
Okay, first up, let's follow the money. Or let's at least try to. Because as you're about to see, when it comes to China's defense spending, the official number doesn't even begin to tell the real story. So officially, the number that Beijing puts out there for its 2025 defense budget is around $247 billion. And yeah, that's a gigantic number, second only to the US. But believe me, that is just the tip of the iceberg. Because when international analysts, people at the US Department of Defense, start digging around, they figure the real number could be as high as $700 billion. That's nearly 3 times the official figure. So you gotta ask, right? Where is that massive gap coming from?
I love this analogy from the source material. It just nails the idea of these black numbers. It's like your official budget is what you tell everyone you spend on groceries. But the real spending, the crazy expensive stuff, is all happening on a secret credit card that nobody knows about.
So what's being swiped on this secret credit card? Well, we're talking about huge expenses that are sort of hidden in plain sight. Things like cutting-edge research and development, the entire nuclear weapons program, funding for all those paramilitary police forces, even paying for veteran pensions. Once you start adding all that stuff in, the sheer scale of the spending becomes absolutely mind-boggling.
So, okay, we've established they are spending a lot of money. But what for? What's the point? That brings us to the actual plan, the strategic blueprints behind this whole military expansion. It really boils down to 3 main goals. First and foremost, achieving key political goals, and we'll get to what that means in a sec. Second, becoming the clear, undisputed top dog in the Asia-Pacific region. And third, being able to project that power across the globe to protect its huge economic interests, like the Belt and Road Initiative. And let's be totally clear, that number 1 political goal is, without a doubt, Taiwan. The entire strategy for this is something called A2/AD, which stands for Anti-Access/Area Denial. The best way to think about it is like creating a giant keep-out zone. The idea is to flood that zone with so many missiles and ships and jets that it becomes too dangerous for, say, US aircraft carriers to get anywhere close. You're denying them access to the whole area. And this massive military buildup leads us straight to the heart of the whole conflict, this incredibly dangerous game of perception. Is China just reacting to threats it sees, or is China's expansion the threat itself? The answer really depends on where you're standing. And this is where you see 2 completely different realities. If you're in Beijing, you look out and you see US alliances like AUKUS and the Quad basically surrounding you. You see threats from Taiwan and a rearming Japan. But if you're one of China's neighbors, you see a country building military bases in the South China Sea, constantly harassing Taiwan, and building up its nuclear arsenal at a shocking speed. And look, this isn't just some academic debate. These perceptions have very real consequences. A recent poll showed that half of all Americans now view China as their greatest enemy, way more than Russia. When public opinion shifts like that, it directly impacts politics and defense policy. It's a huge deal. So how on earth can both sides look at the same facts and feel so genuinely threatened? This isn't just one side making stuff up. It's actually a textbook example of a classic and very dangerous idea in international relations. It's called the security dilemma, and here's how it works. Country A decides to build up its military, just for defense, just to feel safer. But its neighbors in Country B see this buildup and think, whoa, are they preparing to attack us? So, just to be safe, Country B builds up its military, which of course makes Country A feel threatened all over again, so they build up even more. And you can see how this just spirals out of control. It's a vicious cycle. And this metaphor just perfectly captures the whole problem. China can claim that its giant military spear is just to give it a safer walking posture in a dangerous neighborhood. But for everyone else living in that neighborhood, they just see a guy walking towards them with a very big, very sharp spear. It's pretty unnerving.
And you can see this spear and shield dynamic playing out right now all over the region. China builds the world's biggest navy, that's the spear. So Japan cranks up its defense budget to a historic high, that's the shield. China puts out those carrier killer missiles to create its keep-out zone. So the US doubles down on its military bases inside that zone. It's a perfect action-reaction spiral, and it's getting more and more intense.
Which brings us right back to that core, fundamental question. In this whole dangerous game, who actually picked up the spear first? Was it a pure act of aggression? Or was the shield, that network of alliances and bases, just a little too provocative? Maybe it felt so threatening that it left the other side feeling like they had no choice but to build a spear of their own. There are just no easy answers here.
Phew, that's a lot to think about, I know. If you want to hear an even deeper conversation about all this, you should definitely check out the full episode on the Sip&Talk podcast. And of course, a huge thanks again to our sponsor, Micky. You can find a link to their channel right in the description. Thanks so much for watching.